Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today we're tackling a question that seems, on the surface, purely political, but has deep economic roots. What happens when the world's largest economy decides to partially shut down? We're talking about a U.S. government shutdown, a uniquely American political drama with a very real and very high economic price tag. It's more than just politicians arguing on TV. It's an event that stalls industries, costs billions of dollars, and affects the lives of millions of people in ways you might not expect. So what exactly triggers this massive disruption? In simple terms, a government shutdown happens when the U.S. Congress fails to pass funding legislation. There is a law from the 19th century called the Anti-Deficiency Act, which basically says federal agencies are prohibited from spending money they haven't been given. Before the 1980s, this wasn't strictly enforced. Agencies would just keep running, with the understanding that the money would eventually show up. But a legal opinion in 1980 changed all that, leading to the strict shutdowns we see today. When the funding deadline passes without a new budget or a temporary extension, all non-essential government functions are legally required to stop. This forces hundreds of thousands of federal employees to be furloughed, sent home without pay, and disrupts a huge array of government services. While things like Social Security checks and Medicare payments continue, the discretionary spending that funds everything from national parks to scientific research gets frozen solid. Let's talk about the direct costs first, the big headline-grabbing numbers. The most immediate and quantifiable impact of a shutdown is a direct hit to the nation's gross domestic product, or GDP. Think of it as the country's total economic output. The Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan agency known as the CBO, analyzed the longest shutdown in U.S. history, the 35-day partial shutdown from late 2018 into early 2019. Their estimate? The 5-week impasse shrunk the U.S. economy by a total of $11 billion. And here's the crucial part. Of that amount, $3 billion was a permanent loss. That money, that economic activity, is gone forever. It's not something that can be made up later. That permanent loss comes from the lost productivity of federal workers who weren't on the job, and the disruption to private sector businesses that rely on government services. The CBO's analysis of the shorter 16-day shutdown in 2013 paints a similar picture, estimating it reduced GDP by about $20 billion at the time. Investment bank Goldman Sachs has a rule of thumb. For every week a shutdown lasts, it shaves about 0.2 percentage points off quarterly GDP growth. These aren't just abstract numbers. They represent real economic harm, and ironically, the total economic loss is often far greater than the budget disagreement that caused the shutdown in the first place. But the direct hit to GDP is just the beginning. The real damage comes from the ripple effect, the indirect costs that cascade through almost every sector of the economy. One of the most visible examples is tourism. When the government shuts down, so do over 400 national parks, monuments, and Smithsonian museums. These are major tourist draws, and their closure has a devastating impact on local economies. During the 2013 shutdown, the National Park Service had to turn away millions of visitors. The agency estimated this resulted in over $500 million in lost visitor spending in the towns and communities right outside the park gates, places that depend on tourists buying gas, staying in hotels, and eating at restaurants. The U.S. Travel Association has warned that a shutdown can cost the entire travel economy as much as $1 billion per week, factoring in disruptions to air travel and the closure of these cultural sites. For gateway communities, the daily losses can be as high as $77 million. It's like flipping an off switch on a massive economic engine. Then there's the plight of federal contractors. You often hear that furloughed federal employees are guaranteed to receive back pay once a shutdown ends, and that's now true thanks to a law passed in 2019. But that safety net doesn't exist for the millions of people who work for private companies that contract with the government. These are the IT specialists, the janitorial staff, the security guards, and the scientific researchers who are rent on the federal payroll, but whose jobs depend entirely on government contracts. During the 2018-2019 shutdown, an estimated 10,000 companies with government contracts were impacted. Their contracts, worth an average of $13 billion per week, were suddenly suspended. These businesses, many of them small, were forced to furlough or lay off their own employees, and unlike the government, they generally weren't reimbursed for lost revenue or the costs of giving their workers back pay. This creates immense financial hardship and can lead to a loss of skilled workers who leave for more stable jobs. The uncertainty even drives up costs for taxpayers in the long run, as some contractors now include a shutdown premium in their bids to cover the risk of future political impasses. This ripple effect extends deep into the private sector, far beyond just government contractors. The shutdown creates a climate of uncertainty that paralyzes businesses. For example, any company that relies on federal permits, licenses, or loans can see its operations grind to a halt. During the big 2018-2019 shutdown, the Small Business Administration couldn't process new loans, delaying over $2 billion in financing that small businesses were counting on to grow and create jobs. During the 2013 shutdown, the IRS was unable to process 1.2 million income and Social Security number verification requests, which delayed private sector lending, mortgage applications, and other crucial financial activities. When businesses can't predict government policy or the direction of the economy, they become hesitant. They postpone big investments, they put off hiring new employees. This creates a chilling effect on economic growth that is hard to quantify but is very real. Beyond the economic data, however, is the human cost. The profound toll these shutdowns take on the millions of federal employees caught in the crossfire. During a shutdown, hundreds of thousands of workers are furloughed. Hundreds of thousands more who are deemed essential, like air traffic controllers, TSA agents, and FBI officers, are required to work without pay. Even with the guarantee of back pay eventually, the delay can be devastating for families living paycheck to paycheck. During the 2018-2019 shutdown, about 800,000 government workers missed multiple paychecks. Some turned to online fundraising to pay their rent. Others had to visit food banks to feed their families. A federal law enforcement officer described the situation bluntly, saying, "I am most likely going to have to request a furlough to get a second job in order to pay my bills." This financial instability breeds anxiety and erodes the trust federal employees have in their employer. Many report feeling like pawns in a political game, which is deeply demoralizing. This erosion of trust has a significant long-term economic consequence: a brain drain of talent from the federal workforce. The constant threat of furloughs and the feeling of being undervalued makes a career in public service far less attractive, especially for highly skilled professionals in science, tech, and medicine who have lucrative options in the private sector. Research has shown that following a shutdown, there's a notable increase in federal employees quitting. Younger employees leave for more stable careers, while older, more experienced workers choose to retire early. This loss of human capital is a huge blow. One study found that government agencies exposed to shutdowns and the subsequent loss of skilled employees showed a measurable drop in performance, including an increase in accounting errors and faulty payments. The government is already struggling to recruit a new generation of public servants, and shutdowns only make that challenge harder. The long-term cost of this brain drain might be one of the most significant and damaging economic impacts of all. There's also a psychological toll. The stress and uncertainty lead to decreased morale and job satisfaction. One study found that the shock to morale from a shutdown is equivalent to a 10% pay cut. The very designation of an employee as non-essential can be incredibly damaging, sending a message that their work isn't valued, even though that work might involve crucial research or regulatory oversight that protects the public. What about Wall Street? You might expect the financial markets to panic, but the reaction is more nuanced. Typically, a shutdown announcement triggers a short-term increase in market volatility. Investors get nervous about the economic impact, and you see a dip in stock prices as traders adopt a sell-first, ask-questions-later mentality. Sectors that depend heavily on government spending, like aerospace and defense, are especially vulnerable. Another problem is that key economic data disappears. Agencies like the Bureau of Labor Statistics are closed, so the release of the monthly jobs report or inflation data gets postponed. This leaves investors, and even the Federal Reserve, flying blind, making it harder to make informed decisions. However, despite this short-term turbulence, historical data shows that the stock market has been remarkably resilient. Over the long term, the market tends to look past the political noise. In fact, some analyses have shown that the S&P 500 has actually posted positive returns during a majority of past shutdowns. Many investors have even come to see shutdown-driven market dips as buying opportunities, betting that the political gridlock will be short-lived and the economy will bounce back. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we have to look at how shutdowns tear at the social fabric by disrupting public services and disproportionately harming the most vulnerable people in the country. A wide range of vital services are curtailed. For instance, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, might have to suspend routine food safety inspections, increasing the risk of foodborne illnesses. The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, might have to delay toxic waste cleanups and environmental enforcement actions, but the consequences are felt most acutely by those who rely on the social safety net. Food assistance programs like SNAP and WIC are put at risk during a prolonged shutdown. While SNAP benefits are often funded a month in advance, a shutdown that drags on can threaten future payments. The WIC program, which provides essential nutrition for pregnant women and young children, can run out of funding much faster, forcing states to turn away new applicants and creating serious health risks for families who are already struggling. Other programs, like temporary assistance for needy families and the Child Care and Development Fund, have also been threatened. A shutdown of immigration courts can lead to years-long delays in asylum cases, leaving people in a state of legal limbo. The disruption to these services creates immense hardship and deepens existing inequalities. In conclusion, when you add it all up, the economics of a government shutdown reveal a clear and consistent pattern of a self-inflicted economic wound. It's a lose-lose proposition. There is the direct, permanent loss of billions of dollars in GDP. There is the ripple effect of damage that cascades through tourism, federal contractors, and the broader private sector. There is the immense human cost, both financial and psychological, inflicted upon dedicated public servants, which leads to a long-term brain drain that makes our government less effective. And there is the fraying of the social safety net that harms the most vulnerable members of our society. Shutdowns waste taxpayer dollars, they damage the economy, and they hurt the very people the government is supposed to serve. Finding a way to avoid these completely unnecessary and destructive events isn't just a matter of political convenience. It is an economic and moral imperative. The cost of doing nothing is simply too high for anyone to bear.